Hello and welcome to All Together Now. I'm your host, Bobbie Steinbach, and I am so grateful that we can be together in this time of great disruption, be it personal, national, or global. In times like these, people often turn to poetry, reading it, writing it, sharing it. The poet Adrienne Rich said, quote, "When poetry lays its hand on our shoulders, we are, to an almost physical degree, touched and moved." We are delighted to have with us tonight three writers, starting with Bettina Swigger, a writer, nonprofit administrator, and a community cultivator based in the beautiful town of San Luis Obispo, California. And later we'll visit with my friend Shanelle Chloe Villegas and Kalee Burrows, writers and performers in Boston. Each will share one of their original pieces with us. Bettina is coming to us in the middle of a workday at Downtown SLO, the San Luis Obispo Business Association, where she serves as CEO. Welcome, Bettina.
Here. Thanks for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you. Can you tell us about Downtown SLO and your role there?
Yes. So San Luis Obispo, as we call it, is also known as SLO. And we're a very charming, quintessential California coastal town. We're about 4 hours from Los Angeles, 4 hours from San Francisco. And we have a charming downtown. I'm the CEO of our Downtown Association. So I work with about 625 different businesses, from restaurants to shops to architects and engineers who might have second and third floor offices. And we work on placemaking, cultural identity, and economic vitality. So it's been a pretty wild couple of months, as you can imagine, Bobbie.
Indeed, indeed. And of course, this week has added to the wildness and craziness and difficulty of it all. What is happening for you this week, Bettina?
Yes, so California, unfortunately, we have our case numbers rising. I'm sure you're all learning about it in the news. I believe it's making national headlines. And our county is not immune to that. So while we entered into the first shutdown in March, April, and May, we didn't actually have very high numbers of the coronavirus transmission or the COVID-19 infection here. But now those numbers are starting to come. So we kind of had the economic ramifications of the disease before we had the actual disease in a little bit of a way. So it's an interesting way of experiencing this historic moment. And on Monday, Governor Gavin Newsom issued an order that all indoor dining needed to cease and bars should close statewide. So we have a number of really fantastic restaurants and dining places in our downtown. So we have been scrambling over the week to repurpose our right-of-way and give businesses the chance to move their operations into the streets. So literally the construction crews are out setting up barriers. Restaurants are dragging their tables out onto the street. And if it weren't the middle of a pandemic, it would actually be a really wonderful moment of the community coming together through creativity. But the pandemic adds a little bit of a sour taste. But we're really hoping that the businesses can see this through, because many of them are small businesses, they're locally owned and operated, and they probably won't survive a second shutdown.
Very challenging. And the creativity, I think, all over creating this sort of ability for businesses to operate in different ways is heartening and very exciting, I think. I think some of those changes will become a little more permanent, actually. Bettina, you have a poem to share with us tonight. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So in addition to my sort of corporate nonprofit career, I've been a writer for a very long time, and writing has been really important to me during this time of upheaval. I set aside time every morning to write in my morning pages. I adhere to the artist's way, Julia Cameron's kind of principles of creativity. And it's been really helpful to process things through my writing. So this poem kind of poured out of me one day. And it's really about the challenges of wanting to bring people together and missing bringing people together when it's not possible. So that's kind of the origin of it. And I posted it onto Facebook just on a whim, really. And I got some really incredible traction. And the producers of this show saw that and liked the poem and invited me to come on and be here with you today.
Well, it's a wonderful piece, Bettina. The title is Unlikely Love Letter, and we are very excited to share it. Let's roll that video, please.
Us to meet the moment. And it turns out I miss meetings, the real kind, the small talk tiptoe, the ritual breaking of the ice, the unconducted orchestra of fidgets and nods, the brow raises, the coded smiles. I miss eye contact, the swivel and pivot of pupils clicking into place. I miss silence as a tool, the absence of chatter, the power of quiet to bring a room to attention, to allow an emotional breath, to invite the conjuring of questions and clarifications. I miss jokes landing with laughter instead of met by smiles on mute. I miss conclusions that weren't preordained. Same time, I've never had so many meetings, so many important meetings of consequence. I flit from Zoom room to Zoom room without bathroom breaks or drinks of water, slyly appreciating the rhyme, raising my hand to acknowledge the important work being done as I sit braless, unwashed, breathless. I miss different settings and the travel time between meetings, generating bon mot in my head, the practice conversations, the flawless rhetorical rejoinders delivered in complete sentences out loud to my steering wheel or the roof of my mouth. I miss the click of real shoe soles on pavement as I pronounce my points inside my closed mouth, my pulse rising with every footfall and every phrase not yet uttered. I miss arriving, being greeted, the simple act of knowing who is in the room, and the decency of acknowledging their faces. Instead, I bake bread. My KitchenAid stand mixer is the stand-in for the water cooler because making dough is the closest approximation to real conversation. It's not ingredient assembly, it's a dialogue. I introduce new topics, the constituent parts react, the hook mixes the sticky bits into something greater than it was. I need trust. I let it sit and I walk away. I come back later to see how it has synthesized what we discussed. It's different now because of what I said to it. My fingers poking into its pillows, shaping it. Pressure, stillness, heat, accelerated geology. But really it's chemistry. It will change again in the oven. Every time, the final product will seem like a miracle. Thank you.
Reading her poem, her wonderful poem, Unlikely Love Letter. I know when we were rehearsing yesterday, Bettina, you said it feels like a million years ago that you wrote that before Black Lives Matter took off, and you used a bread baking reference about a sourdough starter,
Yes.
Early days. You know, some pieces still resonate. I think there are so many things that all of us all over the world can relate to in your piece. How visceral everyday things have become. How has your life changed, and how have you changed in the midst of this pandemic?
That's such a great question. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I like to say that, or I think I stole this from somebody else actually, that there are no such thing as days anymore. There's just yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And I definitely have become more adept at living in the moment. By nature, I am a planner, and this constant moment of disruption that we're inhabiting together right now, it makes that really hard for a type A personality to thrive in. And ultimately, I think that's actually probably good for my development as a human being. But it is interesting to look back on the elements of the feelings. When I wrote that poem, I was working from home, I was sheltering at home, and I was definitely in the sourdough starter phase. And now I'm more in the demand social justice. Let's rethink the way that we do business and conduct commerce, and our education system, and everything is up for new design ideas.
Yeah. We do have to redefine what is creativity. Yes. Are you seeing anything, Bettina, that makes you hopeful?
There's a lot that makes me hopeful. Some of the ways that businesses and governments and communities are pivoting to take on work and create in new ways is really exciting. While this is definitely the first time we've been through this together, people go through hard things all the time. And it's through our creativity, and it's the connection to our own humanity, and I think through the performing arts specifically, that really makes us able to rise above it all. I've used art along the way in my career and in my life to help me through dark times before. I'm also working on a book right now. I'm about 85% done with a memoir that's about a sudden loss of my mother that happened about 10 years ago. And went through a number of really difficult things. I got divorced. I moved across the country. A lot of things changed very quickly in my life. And yet when I look back on those difficult days, my days got much brighter as a result of that hard time. So I think when we're inside the tunnel, we can't necessarily see the light ahead. We're definitely still in a tunnel, but there will be light, and the light is going to shine brightly. I just have to believe that.
Yes. Thank you so much, Bettina, for joining us tonight and for sharing your work with us. And we certainly wish all the best to everyone way across the country in SLO, and to you in your important work. You take care.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. We are thrilled to have an incredibly talented and inspiring young artist, Shanelle Chloe Villegas, and her partner, Kalee Burrows, with us tonight. I met Shanelle nearly 4 years ago when we worked together on a project I developed called I Am Lear. And I have been following her extraordinary work as a Boston-based actor, poet, deviser, and teaching artist since then. Welcome, Shanelle.
Hi, Bobbie.
I just love that you're on the show with us tonight. I'm so thrilled to see you. Shanelle, you and I met during a project about mothers and daughters, and I understand you are now working on a one-woman show about fatherhood in families of color. So how'd you become interested in this topic?
Well, thank you so much for asking. In my senior year of college, I took a class called Identity. And in that class, there's a bunch of different units. In one of the units, we had a family unit. We had to write an autobiography. And in that autobiography, I wrote a very small portion about my familyhood, like a paragraph, and the rest of it to a higher power. But since then, well, also in that class, we studied genealogy charts, which look much like a family tree, except you can see relationships in that chart. So like you can go back and see if all your families were alcoholics, or if you had a relationship, or if all the women got divorced. And so you can see patterns within your genealogy, and you can change that if you notice like all the men were abusers and all the women were abused. But maybe this couple was a gay relationship and there was no more abuse. You can see all that. And I was like, I gotta write a story about my own life and my experience with mother in that story. Yeah.
And does the piece have a title?
Right now, it does not have a title, but today I thought father-daughter dance could be a potential. People think about a father-daughter dance and sweet it is and a loving with their father, but the dance word I think can have a twist. So I'm thinking that might be it. I'm not sure yet though.
I think it sounds great. I think it's very evocative. So as you've been developing the piece, is there anything that you found that surprised you about yourself?
I guess I was really surprised by the roller coaster of emotions I would feel in writing a piece of my childhood. It was surprised that I would like that this flood of repressed memories came to me, and it was really Shanelle how to deal with that. So I bought a book that's called Shaping Art from Trauma. And I was like, this is perfectly what I need. And I also got a therapist so that I can handle these repressed memories safely. But yeah, I was really surprised to just know how many memories were repressed or hidden from me that I didn't think about for years. And then two, once I started writing, how easily they came.
Right beneath the surface, it sounds like.
Yeah.
I'd like to just say to the viewers that Shanelle's piece includes sensitive language and material about abuse that may be disturbing to some of you. Shanelle, we are so honored to have you premiere a section of your piece on All Together Now. So take it away. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Bobbie. If you ask me, what was your childhood like? I would first talk about my father. I would talk about loving him at the age of 3. I think he was my first love, and my best friend too. I was fascinated by him. I loved his belly. I loved his bald head. I loved wearing his clothes, way too oversized for me. I loved drinking chocolate milk with him at night. I loved eating Snickers with him. Sometimes, I would purposely fall asleep on his lap just so he could hold me. I loved his hands. I trusted those hands. Now, if you were to ask me, at this age of 3, well, what did your father's hands do? I would talk about how his fingers pointed at countries in Africa on a map, while his lips told my brother and I that we are royalty. I would talk about his hands holding me, bouncing up and down my spine as he carried me upstairs to sleep in my pink room. I was his princess. He was my king. Each other's everything. So, if you were to question my father's hands at this age, I would say they were not violent. Yet. The violence came in at 4 and 5. At these ages, I would talk about his hands again. Yes, I would talk about his calloused hands with ingrown nails and what they did at night. I would talk about how his hands hurt himself first. I would say that I grew up seeing the palms of my father curl around a cup of coffee at night that hid Hennessy in itself, while he lay on the couch, stinking and drinking in silence, and moaning and wailing in darkness like some weird abused Loch Ness monster, wallowing in his own watery self-pity. I would talk about his hands feeding me boneless spare ribs as my hands softly caressed the knife marks that spread from one of his ribs to the other like a frown. I would talk about how his hands did that to himself before I was born. I would talk about how we have never spoken about that moment, but I have imagined it. His body lying on a cold, tiled bathroom floor. I would talk about how I imagine a knife in his hands, wild and devil-like, but not possessed, entering his stomach, and how the knife, or I should say, the man who possessed the knife, so badly wanted to remove all of the shit from his life. Yes, I would talk about his hands and how they enacted the pre-beat to abuse, which is just abuse, but in the first person. And after, only after, all pre-beats were completed, and he hurt himself to the point of being numb, could he enact violence onto others. His first act of violence towards me was hurting my mother. He tried to kill her when I was 4. I don't know the reason. I don't think there is one. I don't know if it was day or night. I don't know the time of year. All I know is that our house was far enough away from other houses that if someone screamed, no one could hear. She did scream, our names, calling us to come downstairs with a tone that was a mix of confusion, fear, and surety. That tone only mothers know how to use. And as we raced down the stairs like sporadic children awoken on Christmas morning, we saw my father's hands curl into a fist and touch the pretty face of our mother. At first, his fist aimed for her eyes, so she couldn't see how he hurt her. Then, his fist aimed for her lips, so she couldn't protest his violence towards her. And when she wouldn't stop talking, or yelling, or screaming, or crying, or whatever you call the sounds of pleading for life, his fist aimed for a knife on the table. And then his fist turned towards her, holding her at knife point. "Shut up," he hollered as he pressed towards her. "Please," she whispered as she backed away slowly. At this age, at 4 years old, if time could freeze, I would have been thinking. They say it takes 2 to tango, but in my parents' version of tangoing, it takes 3, because death is making a guest appearance. But time was not frozen, and I was screaming, "Stop, Dad, stop," as I pressed against the wall, helpless. My brother screamed too, but shortly he realized that his words wouldn't win in a battle with swords, and so he raced to the kitchen, wanting to find the biggest knife he could to save my mother, the Queen. My brother. He was a prince that became a knight in one night when he picked up a sword and pointed it at, not a king, like I once thought, but at a man who sat on the throne like one. That was the first time my brother fought the man. Who knew from that moment on he'd spend the rest of his life fighting the man within himself, the government, the man of the house. In that moment, my brother had to fight a monster disguised as a king, disguised as a father. But that monster was the only example of a man my brother had. My father's fist dropped the knife, and after, only after, the living room was filled with tears, blood, and saliva, every sign of death. His fist shakily searched for cigarettes, and when one was found, his index and thumb would pray around the filter. If you asked me, what would you say in this moment? I would talk about the smoke and how it symbolized the minds of both of our parents, always in a haze about the line between love and fear. Then, I would talk about his fingers and how the tips of his fingers would send the tip of that cigarette into an ashtray, like a plane landing softly after it had already exploded. And then his palms would open, as he opened himself up for a hug from my brother and I. And I would talk about how he ran into those arms, while listening to his sobs, his tears falling onto our heads as if his sorrows were the knowledge he wanted to fill his kids with. And we hugged him, the man who attempted to steal life from our mother, because we somehow understood, even at those ages, the abundance of pain a man has to be in to almost kill, but mistake that for love. At the age of 4, I no longer trusted his hands. I no longer loved them. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanelle, so much for sharing that very eloquent piece, those painful memories The complexity and the clarity are so vivid. And I think,
Thank you so much.
they are. I think when artists share difficult moments, it helps so many people. And, from the first second, I think I said hello to you, I fell in love with you. You're such a special, special woman. So
Thank
Shanelle,
you, Bobbie.
you're welcome, Shanelle. I'm wondering, beyond your own personal story, what is it that you're exploring about, in general, about the lives of families of color?
Yeah, I believe in the quote, the Lorraine Hansberry quote, something like the specific is universal and the specific. And so, while I haven't done much research into other people's experience with fatherhood, other people of color's experience with fatherhood, I do believe that the story I have is very universal to my friends and family who have lived fatherless. Honestly, all of my friends, have lived without a father for their entire lives. Most of my friends have sometimes dads come in and out of the household at various points. And so I just think that a lot of people don't even think about the story of the missing father and how that affects thing.
And when you're writing something like this that is so intense and heavy and revelatory, how do you stay positive and healthy when you're working with such difficult material? Do you have a support system, Shanelle?
Definitely support systems. My parents are huge support systems of my work. I shared this piece with my mom. I felt like there would be a conflict of reality because she mentioned in it. I thought that anyone who knows me and they know my mom, and so I didn't know if it was safe to share her story as well, even though it's my story or my perspective. But she was nothing but supportive as well, and of course, my beautiful, the love of my life, Kalee Burrows, and her support for me. And I shared the piece with her first. And
Kalee Burrows is also a poet, and she's a theater artist, an educator who teaches with young people, works with young people, and older generations as well, in schools, community centers, and theater spaces across the globe. So let's meet her. Welcome. Come on in, Kalee.
Welcome, love.
Hello. Good job.
All right.
Hello.
I'm Kalee. So lovely to have you with us tonight as well. And just that particular moment. So, that support is it just comes pouring out right on the screen, that love. What are you working on right now?
So right now I've been working on a play. I want to almost 5 years ago, I was working in an arts residency. We're using music as a way to inspire movement and story. And I used the song Sinner Man by or her version of Sin. And it just all of these memories for me. And then from there, just snowball. And so I started researching Nina Simone's life and finding connects between the two of us. So that's been sort of what I've been working on, and of piecing poems and lyrics and reading a story out of it. It's been really challenging, but really, really enjoyable. Yeah.
Great. I'm sure you've seen the documentary. I mean, you certainly find out what an amazingly resilient woman she was. And I look at you, I look at Shanelle,
Absolutely.
I look at Bettina, and women in general, and see how much resilience there is. So listen, would you come back in August to share some of that play with us?
Oh, I love that. That would be great, Bobbie. Thank you.
Yay. But tonight you have a poem. To do your poem Rhino for us. Why did you write that, and what is it about?
I was sort of going through this conflict of wanting to have connections again, but then also to be independent on my own. And so I was sort of grappling with that. And in the same time, writing little poems and just little one-liners every once in a while. And then at a certain point, I was like, this could be a whole piece. I should do something. And it sort of was, again, along the theme of being therapeutic.
Okay. Well, Kalee, I'd love to hear it. I'm going to ask you, Shanelle, if you can tear yourself away for just a few minutes so we can give Kalee the stage.
I'm out of here. Have fun, my loves.
Oh my God. I wanna be a rhino. I wanna be a rhino. I wanna be a rhino. They say that when a female rhino finds a mate, she locates a hole in a comfortable tree and walls herself in. Surrounded by mud and wood, it's like she understands the importance of self-protection. I want to be a rhino. I want to hunt down homes within trees, collect roots and twigs, mix water with dirt. If it means I'll have the power of a rhino, let me grow thicker skin and live in a tree trunk. If it means someone can love me at branch length, I want to be a rhino. I want to live by myself, but without the loneliness. The loneliness. I felt it this morning while sitting in a Starbucks. I sneezed, and no one blinked an eye. There was no Gesundheit, no God bless you. I actually had to bless myself. Bless me, I said, smiling at how silly I sounded, and you weren't there to laugh. They say that otters hold hands in the night to avoid losing each other. Now, I've never been a strong swimmer, but I will tread water for days if it means I could spend another night holding you. You, that person that understands all my thoughts within one glance, that person who knows how much I hate pickles, knows my birthday like it was their own, knows my dreams as if they had been one of the sheep that had led me there, knows how afraid I am of bridges, how afraid I am of failing, looking like a fool. I had no one to bless me. Why can't we be more like otters? Limbs intertwining so we don't drift apart. I yearn to float in water with you, feel the fluidity we've created, follow the cacophony of kisses, and I will find morning with you. The realest person I've ever known. Realer than the drool on your pillow. Realer than laughing so hard you pee a little, a rumbling stomach in a quiet room, a rug burn, remembering the year we didn't speak and trying to forget that it happened, and trying not to forget that it happened, and trying to forget that it happened all over again. I want to be a rhino. That all my stories could simply seep into my wrinkles. These stories weren't meant to be worn as a form of camouflage, a way to hide from poachers and predators. Then again, they say if you inject a single gram of king cobra venom, it'll kill a person 150 times over. That gives me 150 more chances to reincarnate. Come back as a rhino. I wanna be a rhino. I wanna be a rhino. I wanna be a rhino.
What an incredibly stunning poem. Kalee. I have to say this to you. Bless you.
Thank you very much. I've been waiting on that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And the other thing is, since we heard this in rehearsal, I think we've all been walking around or it's big, just singing, I want to be a rhino. I know I want to be a rhino. So thank you for that. It's very catchy. And I love how you use your hands, lots of hands today. Bettina's hand, she was talking about sourdough starter and the hands of Shanelle's father. And, hands are so expressive. And the piece is so humorous and moving and personal. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. On All Together Now, we often ask artists to share, to talk about projects they want to share with our audience. When we asked you, you had an interesting idea of what to share. And can both of you speak to that, Kalee and Shanelle?
Yeah. So for the month of July, in light of everything that's happening, Shanelle and I thought it was really important to support Black-owned businesses, just only Black-owned businesses. So, and we just did extensive research of local restaurants and local stores.
Yeah, the categories on the Excel sheet are restaurants, laundry detergent, clothes, makeup,
candles, baby toys.
Yeah, literally anything you can find. Before this document, probably only named 10 Black-owned businesses, over to 300. And it's very easy. We made it very easy.
Wonderful.
You can click on a link and go there. You don't even have to do any work at all. And we want to share that with people.
Oh, well, I can't wait to take a look. I've bought some books to educate myself about racism and anti-racism, and I bought them all from Black-owned bookstores, and I really will appreciate following through with your idea. So you folks out there can see a link to Kalee and Shanelle's spreadsheet in the comments. And I am so grateful to both of you to be able to talk with you. You give me such hope for the future. And I hope you come over to my garden and have some tea really soon. Masks and social distance. Bye-bye. See you soon.
Thank you so much.
Love you.
Thank you so much. Bye. Oh, thank you so much to you, Bettina, Shanelle, and Kalee for your work and your words. So if you'd like to see more from All Together Now, please like and subscribe on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And if you'd like, let us know what your favorite poem is or share a poem of your own in the comments. We really do love hearing from you. So since early April, All Together Now has been an all-volunteer effort, from the artists to the producers to the technical team. We are all volunteering our time. And we are so very grateful to the artists for their generosity in sharing their work, and to the audience members who've shown their appreciation by commenting or following or buying an album or a book or donating to some of our artists' causes. And when we began, we thought this was a 6-week effort during a month-long quarantine. Well, as it has become a longer-term effort, we need to raise funds to support the artists and to support the show directly. If you would like to make a tax-deductible donation to support All Together Now, the link is in the comments section. Just click on See More. 60% of funds raised will be paid directly to our artists. And the rest of the funds will go towards production costs, which, God bless them, the producers have been paying out of pocket. We appreciate anything you can contribute. And if you're not able to contribute right now, stay on board with us. We are delighted to keep sharing all these beautiful songs and stories and dances. And music with you. I'd like to leave you with a Salman Rushdie quote. A poet's work is to name the unnameable, to point at frauds, to take sides, start arguments, shape the world, and stop it from going to sleep. They'll be back next Thursday with a new show featuring the musician Fabiola Mendez, who plays the Puerto Rican cuatro, a 4-string guitar. Fabiola has the distinction of being the first cuatro player who graduated from the world-renowned Berklee College of Music. Until then, keep a song in your heart, hold a good thought, and stay awake.